Oh boy, we got a lot to talk about. Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So if you guys are familiar with the channel, if you are subscribed, you know the deal. We are talking about Yellowjackets episode 8. The title of the episode is called It Chooses. Now, if you guys are not familiar with the channel, first thing I want you guys to do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos so you don't miss these. And just a warning, this is going to be a spoiler-filled recap breakdown, so if you guys haven't seen the episode, make sure you check it out, or if you don't care about spoilers, then feel free to continue watching. Let's go ahead and get started, because we got a lot to talk about here. So the episode opens up in the 90s, where we have Mari and Misty. They're upstairs with Lottie, and they're helping her go to the bathroom because of the condition that she's in from the end of the last episode. So she goes to the bathroom, we see that she's peeing blood, so they help her get up, then lay her down, and when they lay her down, Mari starts complaining about the smell and how it's just, it's bothering her, and Misty just finally lets her have it. She's like, you just complain about everything, you're being a brat, if it bothers you so much, go ahead and take the bucket and take it out of here. And so Mari does that, she starts going down the stairs, drops the bucket of pee, and we see her, she starts crying. So then after that, we go downstairs, we see Javi comes in from the outside. I believe he had some wood or something that he was bringing in. They shut the door, and then Akilah comes over and sits down and starts talking to her pet mouse. And just the cutest little pet, she's talking to him. But then Ty comes over and says, "What's in your hand?" And it was at that moment I'm watching the episode and I go, oh shit. You're going to be in so much trouble for hiding this mouse, for giving it food that is supposed to be for you guys. And so I was just waiting for that to happen. Akilah ends up getting real defensive with Ty though, and then Ty says, "What are you doing? The thing is dead." And my reaction watching this episode, I was just like, what? I did not see that coming. And then you see the reaction and the look on Akilah's face between the both of them, her and Ty, just phenomenal acting from both Nia and then Jasmine in the scene. I absolutely loved it. And then we get the intro of the episode. So after the intro, we get the aftermath of what happened last week in the present day, where we see the rest of the adult Yellowjackets. They come into the room where Shauna was. They ask her what the call is about, and they see the look on Shauna's face and ask her what happened. Shauna then explains that it was the police, or got a call from Jeff saying that the police found Adam's body. And you just see the look and reaction on the faces of Ty, Misty, and Nat. And then meanwhile, you have Lottie and Van, who have no idea what's going on with this situation. So Shauna says that she has to leave, she has to go be with her family, and then as she's trying to leave, Nat, Misty, and Ty, they're like, hey, shouldn't we kind of talk about this and figure out what's going on with this situation? And then you have Van and Ty talking. Van can tell that something's up with Ty. She knows that she's lying to her, and so Van ends up going and confronting Shauna. She takes her keys, throws them, and is like, hey, time to fess up. What's going on? Ty then asks Shauna, though, why was it Jeff that called her and told her about the Adam situation? And Shauna admits that Jeff knows about the Adam situation. That kind of throws things into chaos. They all start talking to each other, and that's when Lottie's like, hey guys, we should probably go talk about this in private. We then get a nice transition scene to the 90s where we end up seeing Ty, and she's starting to see her other self again. And I'm thinking the reason why she is because Lottie is out of commission. At least that's how I took that. And man, again, just phenomenal acting from Jasmine here. The way that her other self is looking at her, the smile on her face is just creepy as hell. It reminded me of the horror movie Smile that just came out this past year. And then Van ends up asking her if she's okay. We then see Shauna. She goes to grab a blanket and she's going to go bring it to Lottie when Jen and Melissa, they kind of make a comment about not really caring about Lottie, and at that point, Van ends up standing up and defending Lottie. After that, we then end up seeing Nat and Ben. They're talking, and Nat just mentions that maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea if Lottie did end up dying, because everyone is just kind of changed because of her. She seems to have some kind of hold over everyone. She specifically ends up mentioning Javi and how the other day she ended up seeing him bowing to Symbol Tree, and this instantly catches Ben's attention, so he asks which tree that she's talking about, and she mentions it's the one down by the creek. So then we end up seeing Ben. He goes into the room where Javi is sleeping and starts going through his stuff, and he pulls out several different drawings. Now, the first one, I ended up looking at the drawings a little bit closer for a second, and you see one that has a bird on it. There's also one with a pyramid kind of in the sky with what looks like blood dripping from it. And then the third picture is the one that we have seen already, the one where you have the tree with the roots going down and what looks like a woman in the tree roots. And then there's a fourth picture with some kind of animal, and it almost has like a human body, but an animal head for the top, and you see, I believe, pyramids again. I'm curious what your thoughts are on some of those other pictures. Do you have any idea what those could possibly mean? I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts on those, so let me know if you have any ideas down below. We then go back to Akilah, who it looks like she's getting ready to eat the dead body of the mouse. She goes to put it in her mouth though, and she just can't do it. And then Mari ends up hearing the dripping once again, but this time around, Ty actually ends up hearing the dripping too and tells Mari, is like, hey, I think it's actually coming from over there. Mari gets up and goes over, but when she looks at the wall, she starts seeing blood just dripping down from on the wall. And I know a lot of people have mentioned there was a scene in one of the trailers. It might have been like the one of the trailers for the show when it was coming out for the second season. There was a scene where it looked like Mari was stumbling back and kind of had this look of terror on her face. So now we finally know what that's from. She sees the blood dripping and she just kind of like falls back and freaks out. And no one else can see it, not even Ty. So it was interesting that she could hear it but wasn't able to see anything. But at this point, especially with this episode, we're really highlighting that everyone is honestly starting to lose their shit. We have Akilah, which up to this point I thought she was, doing pretty well considering the circumstances. But now we realize that mouse has been dead has been dead for a while, for several episodes. So we have her, we have Mari hearing the dripping and then seeing the blood dripping from the walls. We have the situation with Ty. Now that seems to be coming back now that Lottie's, out of commission, at least for the time being. And so everyone, we haven't seen exactly everyone in the group kind of have these situations, but several people in the group are really kind of starting to lose their mind at this point. And it is understandable considering what's going on. Then we go to the present day where the cops end up showing up to Shauna and Jeff's house and they tell Jeff that they actually have a warrant. And so Matt has his smug ass looking at them and, they end up going inside and start searching through everything. Callie ends up following Matt into her bedroom and starts recording him. And Matt calls her out for lying about them sleeping together. And so those two are kind of going back and forth. She tells Matt that she's going to tell the jury about how an older man was preying on a teenager. But Matt says that the jury will quickly realize the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree when they find out what her mother has done. Then we go to Jeff, who's in the kitchen, and Matt ends up coming in there with Kevin. They're questioning him and showing pictures to Jeff about what happened to Adam, and you see all of his body parts basically all sliced up, very precise-like. And then they tell Jeff that his tattoos were actually even removed, which I know when the whole situation with Adam was going on, people were wondering, well, hey, what about his tattoos? Wouldn't that make it kind of easy to identify him? So evidently, Misty and them, they thought about that and got rid of his tattoos. They said that he was almost going to be unidentifiable, but they ended up doing a bone marrow test because Adam at one point had donated some of his bone marrow because I believe one of his friends, they said, had cancer. Now, I could be completely off. I'm just throwing this kind of off the cuff. But the first thing that came to my mind watching this, just mentioning the cancer aspect, would there be any way could Adam's friend have been Van's mom? Because we know Van's mom died from cancer. Could there be any connection there? Probably not. Just a quick thought that I had, but I figured I would just share with you guys. So Kevin, eventually, he goes over to Jeff and he's like, did you ever think that Shauna could be capable of something like this? And at this point, though, Jeff is like, I'm not going to say anything else without talking to one of my lawyers. And so Matt ended up leaving at that point. So after that, we then end up going back to the Adult Yellowjackets, and Shauna just explains how she told Jeff because she felt like she needed to have him on her side, which is understandable as far as that goes. It can be lonely having a secret, like something like that. So I do get that aspect. And then Shauna actually mentions, though, how Ty was able to find Van in the first place because she thought that they had lost touch. But obviously we know as the audience that other Ty was the one who was able to track down and help locate Van. Misty ends up bringing up, though, she goes, I've always had Van's address, so you didn't need to go ahead and outsource to find out where she lived. And that kind of causes everyone to look at her and go, what do you mean by that? Misty brings up Jessica Roberts and how Ty hired her to look into everyone else in the group. And Ty explains basically she did that to make sure that none of them would talk if given the opportunity to get paid a good amount of money in order to do so. And then Misty, though, she tells the rest of the group that she doesn't have to worry, or they don't have to worry about Jessica Roberts because she actually took care of that situation. She killed her. We then go back to the 90s timeline where we see Misty. She sees Ben and he's sharpening his crutches. He has a knife or, some kind of sharpening tool. And she kind of just comes over and says, hey, I just want to make sure that you're good. You're not going to do anything crazy after what had happened last week where Ben almost tried to kill himself. And he just explains he's just trying to make his crutches more easier to move in the snow. Then we go over to Travis. So we see Travis and he's looking over at Nat and Javi. And Nat actually ends up making a pair of gloves for Javi, gives those to him. And so Travis sees that. He comes over, sits down next to her, and just, says that she's a good person. And he apologizes if he ever made her feel like she wasn't a good person to begin with. And so it was just really nice to kind of see those two reconcile after, kind of being on the fringe with each other. After that, we then go up to the upstairs where Lottie is located, and we see her struggling to breathe, which, what after happened last week is very understandable considering she was beat to shit. So she's struggling to breathe. She ends up telling Misty that basically if I end up dying, I don't want you guys to waste my body. And then we cut to a scene of Coach going outside and he's going to look for the tree that Javi was at. We then go back to the present day where, again, you have the Adult Yellowjackets. Shauna brings up that the FBI was actually asking about Nat. Misty stops her at that point and explains that the FBI was actually her and Walter, but when they were talking to Randy, he was acting kind of weird and he brought up Jeff's name. And then it's at that point that Misty realizes that Jeff actually had access to Shauna's journals, and so the group quickly realizes that Jeff was the one that was actually behind the blackmail, and yeah, they're not too happy about that. So then we end up going to Walter. We get to see him. I know some people were wondering if we were going to see him. I know I had a couple people mention that in the comments. I knew we were going to see him at some point just because it's Elijah Wood. His character, I thought he was going to pop up before the season's end for sure. And he's working on this giant-ass puzzle, so we know why there is a puzzle on the clue sheet for this week's episode. And so he's working on that when he gets a notification that Adam's body was found. And then we see him, he reaches out to the police department and tells them that he has some information that might be relevant to their investigation. Then after that, we end up going to Jeff, who hears something in the kitchen. He sees that Shauna has actually come home. So he goes in there and is talking to her. We quickly realize this is a dream, though, because all of a sudden she cuts Jeff. I was like, oh shit, Shauna somehow got back. She stabbed Jeff. She's going to kill Jeff because of what had happened. But we find out it is a dream because, so you see a flap of Jeff's skin hanging off, and then you see that Shauna, her freaking hands have electric knives or whatever, and she looked like almost like a Edward Scissorhands or something like that, just with electrical knives. And I was like, what the fuck is going on right now? And so Jeff ends up waking up and he goes out to the living room, realizes that Callie is up, and so he goes out there to talk to her. And Callie, she asked her father if, she is like her mom. And Jeff just explains to her that Shauna went through a lot when she was out in the wilderness. But then we end up finding out that Jeff actually tells Callie that Shauna had another baby. And so we now get confirmation that Jeff knew about the other baby. He tells Callie. You can see just like the shock and surprise on Callie's face. She ends up, she starts crying. And so Jeff goes over to comfort her. And man, I just absolutely, I loved Jeff in this scene. Just going over, trying to comfort Callie. He does some dumb shit, but he's trying to do his best. So like in this scene in particular, I just really loved him for that. So then we briefly go back to Walter, who he's in his giant-ass house, and he goes over to one of his closets and pulls out what is a purple outfit. I don't know if it was like a shirt or a jacket. I believe that was something of Misty's. I just can't remember 100%. So if one of you guys watching the video, if you could tell me if that was the case, like I said, I'm pretty sure it was, but I could be totally wrong. So let me know on that down below in the comments. We then go back to the 90s where Misty, she's taking care of Lottie, who just looks absolutely awful. And then Misty ends up telling the rest of the group what Lottie told her, that if she is to die, she doesn't want her body to go to waste. But several of the Yellowjackets, they say that they just can't imagine being here without Lottie. Travis then mentions, though, that where they're all starving, where Lottie's starving, even if the wilderness wanted to keep her alive, it might be out of their hands just because of where she is starving. And so Ty then at that point, she speaks up and says that we have to find a way to stay alive, and it can't be Lottie that we end up eating. So then we go back to the present day where obviously the adult Yellowjackets crew, all of them are pretty mad at Shauna after finding out that Jeff was behind the blackmail. But Van does kind of defend her in a way, because Shauna brings up that if it was one of their spouses that she probably would have, went to try and kill them. And Van kind of understands where she's coming from, because Misty did end up killing Jessica Roberts. Nat then speaks up and says that, guys, we just really need to sit down and just talk about everything. We are so messed up with what happened years ago. We need to sit down and just, talk about this, get everything out on the table. But Lottie then mentions that this isn't something that therapy is going to fix. Lottie then says that something has brought them all together, and now they have to give it what it wants. And I realized at that point, I was like, oh shit, shit is about to get real heavy right now. I can just feel it. And sure enough, we jump back to the 90s timeline where we see the Yellowjackets. They pull out the skull with all their belongings on it. They start getting that already, light the candle, and then we see them break out the cards. And so I was right, several episodes, which I know several people I think mentioned it too. I wasn't the only one that said that, but I was right when I was talking about that when they used the cards initially. I just had a feeling that those were going to be used again at some point for a much darker reason. And again, on the sheet that we got for the notes for this episode, we see the Queen of Hearts on there. So they all start taking turns drawing cards to figure out who's going to be the one that ends up drawing the Queen of Hearts. And I initially thought when this was going around, I was like, oh, it's probably going to be Jen or Melissa, just because of the comments that they made last episode, the comments that they made this episode about Lottie. I was like, it's probably going to be one of those two. But just what an amazing scene, what a tense scene this was, just because the longer that it went around the group of people picking out the cards, the people that were remaining to pick their cards, you could just see the look on their faces. They're like, yeah, I'm probably going to be screwed because there's only so many to pick from. So then it ends up getting to Nat, and I was sitting there going, there's no way it's going to be Nat because she's alive in the present timeline. But sure enough, she ends up picking up the card, and it's the Queen of Hearts. Now, I had a thought about this, and I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on this. Now, do you just think that this was just really shitty luck on her part? Or do you think there was a supernatural aspect to it? Do you think the wilderness, because Nat was one of the people, she's never really believed in Lottie and her just beliefs in nature and all that stuff. Do you think it had something to do with that? It was trying to eliminate her because she doesn't believe in that kind of stuff. Let me know your thoughts on that down below in the comments. So Shauna then tells Nat, she tells her to turn around. She ends up putting on Jackie's necklace around her. And again, this was something that people had discussed, that if it ended up coming down to having to kill other members of the group, were they maybe going to, whoever the person that they were going to sacrifice, they were going to put the necklace around. I believe, and again, I have to go back and watch season 1, and I'm definitely going to do that once season 2 is done. But did Pit Girl have Jackie's necklace? I believe she did. I could be wrong on that, but I believe she did. So seems like every time a new person is sacrificed, they might get Jackie's necklace put around them. And so anyways, she tells her to turn around. She's getting ready. She takes the knife, getting ready to kill Natalie, slit her throat. And then Natalie says, wait. She turns around, looks at Shauna, and she says, you're going to have to look me in the eyes and do this. And holy fuck, guys, I swear to God, even though obviously we knew Nat was going to survive this scene because she's alive in present day, this scene was just tense as fuck. The music, just the acting, the expressions for all the different actors in this scene, such a well done scene overall. And then as you thought that, oh, maybe they're going to do it, but they're not going to, all of a sudden Travis comes over, knocks Shauna down, gets a couple of the girls away from Nat, and then tells her to run outside. A couple of the girls get up, they take Travis, slam him against the wall, and they get a knife to his throat as, he tells her to run, and then Natalie is off and running for her life. And once again, I love the needle drop here. We have the Smashing Pumpkins with Bullet with Butterfly Wings. Just some of the song choices have been so perfect, both in season 1 and season 2. But we see that as Nat is running through the woods and the rest of the Yellowjackets crew is chasing her. We then quickly go back to the adults where we see Lottie and she's talking to Shauna and she just says, don't you get the feeling that something is making you do this? In order to get out of this, we fully have to give into it. So then Lottie ends up pulling out a tray with several different drinks on it, and she tells the rest of the group that in one of these cups is a solution that they use to euthanize animals. And so they're all going to grab one of these drinks, drink it, and then the wilderness will pick who they're going to sacrifice. And obviously the rest of the group is like, Lottie, you are fucking nuts. We are not going to do this. And Lottie just explained, she goes over to Ty and she says, you killed your dog, you almost killed your wife. Then she says to Shauna, you're probably going to lose your family at the rate that you're going. Tells Misty, she already did kill someone. And then obviously the whole situation with Nat, with her trying to kill herself, Van. And so do you guys think that we are actually going to lose an adult member of the Yellowjackets crew by the season finale of season 2? So then as the episode is starting to wrap up, we go to Coach, who's in the woods. He finally finds the tree. He goes over to it, is looking at it, make sure it's the right one. And then after he confirms that it is, goes over, realizes there's an opening where the roots are, and he goes down into it. Now, it was super hard. I don't know if it was just me on the screen that I was watching or what, but it was very hard to tell what was down there. It was super dark. From what I think I could see, and again, if you guys, maybe if you had like a better screen, and I even shut off the lights to try and help with the situation, what I think I saw was a fire pit, and I know for sure what looked like there was bones on the ground. Now, question for you guys, do you think that Crystal or Kristen's body, do you think that it got brought in here in this underground tunnel-ish area somewhere? Do you think that we're going to find out that she's in there? Then we go to Javi. He ends up finding Nat, and he says, hey, I can take you to a place that the others don't know about. He says that you can trust me, and she does. And so they start running. They're going across the ice. You see the rest of the group right behind them. They all have weapons. So we finally get that scene that I've been waiting for a while, where in one of the trailers you saw them with pitchfork, well, not pitchforks, but spears and stuff like that. And they're coming after. We realize now it's Nat. And so they're running, and then all of a sudden you see Javi looks down and the ice starts cracking, and then it breaks. He falls in. Nat obviously tries to go and help him, but then Misty comes over, grabs her, and tells her, no, you can't save him, because if you do, the others will then kill you. And so she lets go of Javi, and they just sit there and let Javi drown and die. I was watching it and I was in shock. I was like, that is so fucked. And that's the way the episode ends. And if you think about it, in a way, Travis kind of is the one who ended up getting his brother killed, because if he didn't end up saving Natalie, they would have just killed her. Javi wouldn't have ran out on the ice. That wouldn't have happened. And so how do you think that's going to affect Travis? Obviously, the relationship between him and Nat, they just kind of reconciled in this episode. That's probably going to be gone again. I don't know if he's going to blame her, but he's going to be a mess. And so how do you think that's going to affect him? How do you think that's going to affect Natalie, having, witnessed this, where she had to sit there and basically just let Javi die after he was offering to try and help her? man, like what a crazy, I know this was the episode that if you guys have watched my interviews with the couple of the Yellowjackets cast members that I've had on, a lot of them, this was the episode that they were really excited for people to see, and after watching it now, I can understand why. So yeah, holy shit, what a crazy episode. I believe we just have the one next week. I know some people have talked about there might be a 10th episode. It's not, haven't seen it like listed anywhere, but I think I did see an interview where one of them, Van, mentioned that there was a 10th episode, so we might have 2 left. But if not, the finale is next week. I can't believe the show, this season's already done. It's been a crazy ride, and I just want to take a second to thank you guys. Thank everyone so much for watching these videos, for commenting on the videos, liking, sharing them. You guys have been awesome. For the people that have subscribed to my channel for the Yellowjackets content, I can't thank you guys enough. Like it honestly, it really means a lot to me. I've had so much fun engaging with all of you. It's been a blast on the Facebook page too. Again, if you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it so that way you get notifications for all my new videos. Make sure you check out my interviews with the cast members of Yellowjackets that I've had on this year. I'll put those in the description. You'll also see them at the end of the video. And then I do have at least one more interview coming out. It should be done this next week. So I'll have that, I believe, up for the finale. But again, thank you guys. It's just been so much fun. I can't wait for next week. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.